Okay. Now, Chris, I hope you can hear me.
Look good. You're pretty visible. I think standing there's good. Question
Yeah.
is, you want to give people something to I was like standing behind something as a
Yeah.
naturally shy person.
I looked around, there's no
That
small
thing
lectern.
that doesn't move.
No, and they have big warning signs that
Not to move it.
Yeah.
Okay, I will respect that.
Yeah.
David would be.
You hear sound on YouTube?
Yeah, I can hear there's a delay with the other, but not significant. I just had to turn the sound up on the YouTube so that I wasn't getting an echo.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
it seems to be working.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm just gonna leave them both on since they're both working. If you, I don't know how to. Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing.
I see Sally is on.
Ah, that would make sense.
Hi, Sally.
Hello.
Everything looks like it's running okay today.
Yeah.
Yeah, on our next to last hearing, we're finally getting the hang of it.
No.
That's always the way it goes.
Actually,
Never too late.
the 10th Judicial Circuit, the Chief Judge Don Blessing wants to have me come talk about the EGAD Virginia committee at a February meeting. It's not clear to me whether he wants to take like live suggestions and comments by the attorneys, but it's a bar circuit on the agenda.
Hi, Sandra.
We have Sandra with us. Great.
It's like what I use for my lawnmower.
Hey, Sally.
Uh-huh.
If you want, you can monitor through YouTube. Just
Okay.
because it's hard to monitor both. I have to have sound off on one, and then I won't know if it goes out. So maybe I can monitor Ring Central, and you can monitor the YouTube channel, and then just text me an issue comes up, and I can relay that to David.
Okay, that sounds good because I'm going to be leaving here in 10 minutes or something, but I'll put it on my phone on the car drive home and then just keep watching.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think the biggest thing is the audio. So if for some reason
Yeah.
that goes out, just let them know. But I think that way we don't have to both be trying to do.
No, that sounds good. I'll probably sign off now then, and I will log in on YouTube.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you so much, Sally.
Thank you, Sally.
Bye.
We missed the November 2nd Box Office Brewery Crosswinds Band Grilled Cheese and Tomato Soup Festival, which actually looks rather lovely. Also, there's a wine tasting room that says it's pet and kid friendly. I'm worried about the kid friendly.
Yeah, use the restroom very quick.
I will hold the fort.
Availability of meeting. What it stays back. But you work a long day.
Andrea?
Yeah.
This is Chris again. We also have Ed Weiner on. And
Oh, good.
Corin Peters.
Great.
Ed and Corin are both, newer members of the EGAD Virginia.
I know, I remember when Michael York solicited it.
But just wanted to let you know that they
Alright.
have joined as well.
Great. Well, right now, we're, T minus 27 with an empty room.
So take bathroom breaks and get your snacks now.
That's what's happening. I'm telling the court during the, those things happen. Yeah, I'm about to go see whether there are any Reese's Cups left. If there are, it's because I missed them at the last meeting.
I wish you well in your quest.
I'll wait till David comes.
And remind David to push record.
Yeah, I
'Cause I
will.
know that there's a lot going on in that room. It doesn't look like I can do it on my end.
I will pass him a note. Or even just tell him. Let me, I think I said this to David already. I can't remember if I said it in the meeting that we had yesterday, but I spent the weekend at the Virginia Law School and met the new dean and talked to a bunch of people. I was part of a larger group, but they basically, when I had a conversation with somebody in administration about the legal desks issue, I don't want to say this is their attitude, but the sense there is entirely different from the sense one gets, not surprisingly, at Appalachian. And that is, I believe that they said that in the graduating class of 2023, the median income for the top three quartiles, right, was well over $200,000. They are all going to tall building, I would say, situations. It may or may not be a law firm, but they're all going into business. The bottom quartile are basically, not all of them, going into public service. Is that if you surveyed the 300 plus graduating members of that class, if you found 15 that were going to join or open practices in what we would think of as rural communities, that would be an overestimate. That is not, I think two things are going on. One is it's not what they're teaching to, but it's also not who's applying to go there. So that's just informational.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
I mean, it was pretty interesting, and they had no idea about I told them about the number of UVA law grads actually sitting for the Virginia bar in the last couple of graduating classes, and they were surprised. I think they don't, given how closely Appalachian seems to track it, they don't track.
Yeah, I'm sure they're tracking their bar passage, but maybe not so concerned about what state they're
Correct,
taking the bar.
correct, exactly. And so if anybody has even noticed that, which I'm not sure, maybe somebody has, they are not, it is not on their radar screen as something that they either can or should influence, which is also interesting.
Yeah.
But, I'm not sure I would have focused on that at all last week, and if it hadn't been for that meeting 2 weeks earlier in Grundy. So that was.
Yeah, I'm glad you raised it. I think David met with the dean and they didn't talk so much about the difference between big firm attorneys and small and solo practitioners, but they did talk about the low number of graduates staying in Virginia and just the fact that they really have a geographically diverse student body.
Right.
So they have a lot of students who aren't starting in Virginia. Even if they came to UVA for law school, they're not necessarily from Virginia to begin with, and then
Right.
many of them are going back to their home states or states where they can.
Well,
get the
if
best
they're
job.
making $200,000 a year, then I don't know where they came from, but unless they came from, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, they're not going back to Arkansas.
Yeah, I think he said that it was both, and David can tell you now that he's back, but
Yeah.
it was both that they were geographically diverse coming in, and then we're going to not only where the jobs were, but also maybe back to where they came from, if that also allowed them to do.
Yeah.
You know, a job that met their needs and
Right.
desires, because they're highly competitive students.
Yeah, I think several of our schools, probably at least 3, regard themselves as national law schools. So they don't expect people to stay. in
Right.
Virginia.
Maybe it's the public service attorneys that are going back to their communities.
I don't know. I mean, well, that was the other thing that was interesting, was hearing about the different programs they have to support what I'll refer to too broadly as the lower quartile. They have loan forgiveness programs in place for no matter where you're employed, if you're making less than $80,000 a year.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. Interesting.
The
Should I call them and see if there's okay.
I remember at our Eastern Shore hearing, the judge. We may have had several. We just have a couple. I think, but the female judge who was with us is really interested in like doing their best to sponsor a new attorney, give them housing support, financial support, business management support from there's a college in Maryland on the Eastern Shore, which seems to operate as like a community college for the whole Eastern Shore, and could give sort of business management teaching as well. But anyway, I said I'd be glad to work on finding if there's any other locality that's done this, like a county government, but I haven't spent any time looking at.
It might be interesting to have somebody research the programs the medical communities have for placing rural doctors. I mean, stuff else. Check out Chip Master's piece. So Chris told me that a meter is on, and that we need to remember to push record. That's all.
Thank you for that. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, the Corin Peters is also on.
Great.
Just a reminder to all the committee members that have joined remotely, you are able to participate and ask questions. So, feel free to ping David by, speaking up if you want to.
Yep, absolutely.
This is Corinne. I'll just say hi briefly.
Thank you, Corinne. Thank you, Bill. I see Sandra, I don't see Ed.
It looks like Sandra's having audio issues, David. I think she just chatted you. Unfortunately, I'm not able to chat back.
Okay.
And it looks like Ed just joined as well.
Okay, Sandra said, are we supposed to be hearing anything? On closed caption, it was transcribed for I did not hear anything for them.
If she's not able to hear, she might want to turn on YouTube simultaneously and send her questions by chat.
Good, good idea.
You could chat her that, David.
To date, we have not had a situation where we would really utilize a translator for any language, but that may not be the case when we hit the more urban areas. Just something else for me to put on the to-do list.
Now Sandra's, oh, yeah, okay.
David, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. That sounds like
Ed Weiner here.
Ed. Yes, absolutely. Ed, thank you for being with us.
Well, I'm just back from court. In third week of a trial. Got to go back tomorrow morning when I'm done.
Wow.
But I just thought I would check in, and I saw it's pretty quiet, so I just thought I'm gonna. Hi, Andrea.
Hi, how are you? Incidentally, I promised I would send Mary Kosar a check.
You're such a.
I'm a little late this year,
That's why I love you.
but my heart's in the right place and there's still something left in the checkbook.
Yeah, there you go. All right, gang. Well, I just want you to know my heart's in the right place too.
We know that.
Okay. I'm gonna go prepare my closing argument.
Good idea.
Can we help?
Absolutely. You could give it.
Oh, no, I couldn't give it. I couldn't.
Thank you.
I would just yell, vote Pedro and run screaming from the room.
Thanks for all you do.
All right, you guys.
Thank
be
you,
good.
Ed.
Thanks, Ed. It's like 2004. So next week also starts at 5.
Five is definitely worth better for us.
Well, it's Senator Pryor. I mean, remember all those discussions we had in the beginning, 11 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. It's like, no, we got it right the first couple of times. Perfect. Friday afternoon.
Yeah, what we find, I think, in these communities is that the lawyers and judges are all super busy. During the workday is not a good time.
I think that in some ways recruiting bodies would be, well, I mean, maybe this is obvious, in the more urban areas would be easier because we know people who are on boards of social service agencies who will, I believe, help protect people.
Okay, Lord. I just heard a door noise and it capture that person whether they want to be captured or not.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Happy to see you. Tomorrow is our meeting?
Mhm.
You going live to the meeting tomorrow? I'm just going to, but it's too much. Hi, how are you? I'm well. I am not pre-registered. That's okay. We're really happy.
I figured, and I should go change, I'm gonna go change my glasses.
You don't need to change. Well, I mean, you might know.
Oh, no, I can see them. They're great for me. It just freaks everybody else out.
Doesn't bother me. Yeah, we're very welcoming.
I love it. Oh, refreshing.
Yeah, so I need reading glasses and I'm too cheap to get reading sunglasses, so, I gotta go either or.
Yeah, no, I broke down when I was in a MCLE seminar and I'm wearing two pairs of glasses at the same time so I could see what's in front of me and what's up on the screen. I said, okay, you gotta get.
Might be for
Yeah, exactly. So I just went across the board and now I can see. Well, you want me to,
Or just write your name on the bar and grab a refreshing beverage and
where's your athlete? No, opposites. It's me post-career trying to make use of my valid brain, but no internet, so wow. Yes, but I have no cell signal. I love it. Well, keeps it quiet, right?
Yeah.
It's interactive with the world. I
I
do.
do. Or hasn't done it.
No, it hasn't. I don't. So I to whoever. Speaking of technical, we have, like, if you did three things. And it's one of them, the second one, really. Don't. No one else has. If I didn't have it, I'd really be. Yeah, you know, and in the movie, I'm not, the joke is I'm 50 miles from. You're my neighborhood. So it is crazy. It's annoying. Just spending time with like 2 days.
Oh, yeah. Who's one?
Yeah. Coming. This is a great. Andrew Richmond. Yeah. You know, John Whitfield. I don't, but I do know. Who do.
Are you here on behalf of a group or yourself?
On myself, I'm a local lawyer, not practicing.
Okay.
Saw the thing. I've had stories on both sides to share if you're interested.
Yes.
We're like, me too.
We are actually here to listen. Somebody's asked me today about this program and it's this, well, how much talking do you do? I said, yeah, 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Here's a ladies' room, here's the, the fire escape and, try to work for family. It's pretty much.
Oh, no, that's it. That's hard for me. I was gonna say, that takes the fun. I'm just kidding.
See, never know who's gonna show up, so, or you're all here. Yeah, right, exactly. We'll, so, yeah.
We had 5 people figure it.
That's good.
It's another choice, because I didn't practice.
And I believe we don't have a good driver.
Which is weird.
My cancer break.
You did.
Oh, it's
Someone-
yeah. Oh, I didn't register for that reason. I didn't,
Well, he is going to testify. You're my witness.
Oh, what?
Well, you learn, you read. This is what we did now, we drafted Bruce Russell. Without trying to understand. That's it. And Bruce has never lost a word. Oh. Okay. No, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Oh, they would have been broke sections so hard. I should think it's normal when the like we did it. My day job was really late. Okay. One of the two for me. Yeah, what's the thing? It's like but
I bet they probably didn't send one directly,
And you like running.
I'm the board advocate, so I work with them a lot. Yeah.
You know this guy?
No.
I'm Cindy's boss. I'm far away. And his name is John Whitfield. They usually get around to that. Yeah. Everything right. I take over it. And I'm one of the two co-chairs. A good man. My picture.
Actually, the demo has standing. So. probably be, down below Stanley.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, down below, Stanley's below.
Yeah. Thanks. Sort of. If you're interested, you'll talk. You can analyze it. Like my clothing that we here. Great, so have a seat. We're gonna be facing toward this, the right side of the.
Thank you.
Yes, yes, with Henry and I are gonna sit up here. So you also.
Yay.
Yeah, I know, I'm past the time. So what do you do?
These days I feed animals. I go into the chain down. I'm crushing. Then. Here we are, 10 years later. I would love to. Here's. I haven't figured. And just letting people know that I'm there. Because it's going to. No, yeah, if there's a way that you know would have that invitation. Yes, and we're all aware.
So it's part of
I'm more than glad to talk about it. Exactly, yeah, you just have to put this still.
Find out what something you like to do, and if the patient plays the sections and they feel like they do, they have parents leave.
Exactly, yes, and more than I'd love talking to clients because I'm not. But when you think even I might do something.
Right.
So much. You have a card. I have a card. As I'm sitting there, my lawyer, I didn't bring it to you. But I'm not as a person. What happened to me? As long as
I'm only standing up because I don't speak that well when I'm standing. And my name is Andrea Bridgman. I am co-chair with David Newmeyer of the State Supreme Court Access to Justice Commission Committee. Whitfield, yep.
We're starting.
I got halfway through. And it's like I can't even get John to pay attention.
Oh, I'm sorry.
State Supreme Court Access to Legal Services Committee for, I don't know what we call it, listening tours. In 2019, the State Supreme Court Access to Justice Commission, which was established now 10 years ago, was about to embark on a listening tour around the state to try to find out from actual people and lawyers we don't normally hear from about what barriers they are encountering to accessing justice, the court systems, whether it's finding a lawyer, for a lawyer, which is not something the court can really manage that well.
I'm sorry, I was actually asked you to stand here because you will actually be in focus for YouTube. We are live streaming this on YouTube for public view, and for some reason our camera is doing like soft background out of focus.
Right. We will not get 1 million views,
Yeah.
just saying.
Okay.
Anyway, so where I was going with this was in 2019, we were going to kick off a listening tour around the state. COVID intervened, didn't happen. We are doing it now. I believe this is the 6th hearing. We call it a hearing, but it's hearing because we're listening. We have been focused on rural areas in conjunction with the State Bar Committee that David will talk about briefly. But we are taking this information, we will be digesting it, we will be reviewing, and we will use it, I hope, to inform activities of the Access to Justice Commission and the State Bar. I think all of you are familiar with this room, so I don't need to say where the restrooms are or where the fire exits are. Feel free to get up and help yourself to refreshments. If you didn't sign in, please sign in. When you're speaking to the group, stand here. And I defer to David.
Great. Thank you again for coming. My name is David Newmeyer. I'm Executive Director of Virginia Legal Aid Society, which sounds statewide, but actually covers South Central part of the state. I'm based in Lynchburg. And in the spring of this year, the Virginia State Bar president formed a committee to study a dual set of problems. One is the existence of legal deserts in Virginia and places with not enough legal help to meet the needs of the local population, and the associated problem that the number of law graduates who are taking the Virginia bar exam when they graduate has been rapidly declining over the last 10 years. It's gone down by about 2/3. And it's together, these have long-term implications for people's ability to get legal help when they need it in Virginia. So I was asked to be chair of the committee, and it has 15 attorneys and judges from around the state that are members. And we're doing a series of field hearings, as Andrea mentioned. We have one more scheduled in Lexington next week. And then we are also looking at a variety of published materials. Other states have worked on these things, look to see what they've done and what law journals have to say, that sort of thing. And we'll be producing a report in the spring with recommendations for the Virginia State Bar. There may be recommendations for the Board of Bar Examiners, for the Supreme Court and General Assembly as well. And we keep news about what we're doing updated on the State Bar website, public website. If you just look for our acronym, which is EGAD VA, it stands for Entry, Growth, and Distribution of Virginia Attorneys. You can find recordings of all these hearings. You can find other materials posted as we're going along. And so really welcome your showing up tonight to sort of contribute to this process. And John Whitfield in the front row here is also a member of our Access to Justice Commission committee that's working on this, and he's executive director of Blue Ridge Legal Services, which serves the Valley here. So I think we are ready to get started. We are live streaming. This laptop is on YouTube live, and it'll be recorded and online. And this camera is on Ring Central, and our individual committee members are on that. And it's a way that they can both interact with Andrea and me as well as watch what's going on. So I want to reward the people who registered in advance first by asking the Phoenix Project if you guys would like to start and tell us what brought you here, and if you would stand up here while you're doing it. I suggest if you want to do it together, you can, or you want to do it one at a time, whatever works for you. Great.
So I'm Ava. I'm the director of Phoenix Project. We're a nonprofit agency that serves survivors of sexual and domestic violence located in Front Royal and Warren County, Virginia. And all of our services to our clients are free and confidential. And I did not actually realize I'd be up here, and certainly I was speaking, so I asked for a little bit of grace. But basically what brought representatives from our agency here tonight. So I'm here with Candy. She's a court advocate, absolutely incredible human being. It's just to make sure that survivors who are experiencing intimate partner violence, sexual assault, domestic violence, and the crime of stalking are represented in some way, shape, or form within everything that y'all are trying to accomplish. I do have just a few statistics that I'd like to share, if that's okay. Can't take credit for these. These all came from Candy. And this comes from the Justice and Government Project. So 83% of victims represented by an attorney successfully obtained a protective order, as compared to just 32% of victims without an attorney. So this information is specific to those who are experiencing some form of intimate partner violence. EGAD-VSA, which is sexual assault victims, reported an aggregate total of 3,446 separate legal problems in areas identified in a survey that they did, with an average of 19.69 legal problems per household respondent. This is 2 times higher than the average of 9.3 problems per household year documented for general low-income population. And the National Network to End Domestic Violence in 2017 found in one of their surveys of 1,762 shelters that DV survivors without legal representation are more likely to be later victimized than those without access to legal representation. And I have a whole bunch more information with all of those statistics on here. Suffice it to say that pro bono especially, but access to affordable, trauma-informed legal help for our survivors is absolutely critical. Not only if we look at the individual who is experiencing that, but certainly when we bring that out and talk about the family unit, especially if there are children involved. And then when we continue to expand that out, we're looking at creating safer communities as a whole with adequate legal representation that is absolutely trauma-informed on behalf of our survivors. So I just wanted to make sure, really, that's the reason why we're here. Sure.
So may I ask a question?
Yeah.
Can you describe to me, because I am not well informed, what trauma informed means,
Yes.
please?
So let me share an example of what it is not, if that's okay. So say there's a survivor who is seeking court services and they are doing the thing where they're standing before the judge and the judge looks at them and says, well, this sounds real bad. Why didn't you just leave? And so what we're doing is we're putting the blame and the victimization on the shoulders of the survivor. What we're not doing is understand the nuances of all of those interplays of coercive control and making sure that the finger is adequately pointed to where it should be, which is that perpetrator of violence. So what that trauma-informed justice looks like is making sure that the survivor is not being re-traumatized by words, action, deed, by people in positions of power, like lawyers, attorneys, that entire court system as it is currently, by making sure that all of the blame is squarely on the shoulders of that perpetrator, of that abuser.
So if you could come up with a couple of bullet points of what would help. I mean, obviously there's probably not one silver bullet to solve these problems. Would it help to have, I'm going to use an archaic term, sensitivity training for judges? Would
Absolutely. Yes. Trauma-informed training that is not only required, but making sure that the judges that there's some sort of system of accountability so that the judge is being. Yes, thank you.
Okay. And then something we heard in a prior session was that the forms themselves for the restraining order are too complicated for people in crisis. Would you think that working with those forms would help at all?
I think that would be very, very helpful. And I'm kind of looking over at Candy because
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, she,
Well, feel free. I mean, I think we can pick up the audio. If
The actual packet itself is old.
Okay.
A lot of the terms on there, the average Joe isn't going to come in here and know what these terms mean.
Okay.
You're coming in a state of crisis. You're not going to be able to digest everything that's going on. The paperwork, if it's not filled out completely, you then have to go over it all over again. It's a lot to handle, especially when you're in crisis. Like you can't even think straight. I mean, just imagine a time that you've been scared to death of something jumped out and frightened you. That's an ongoing state for the people that we work with. And then to be put in front of an individual and try to get a protective order, and then in front of the judge, and then other attorneys that are fighting against the protective order, and in front of the perpetrator. So the whole system itself needs revamped. It is extremely traumatizing to victims. It's extremely traumatizing to me. Because we take all that in. We want to fix the system. You will hear people say that they're trained in sensitivity and that they're trauma informed. And I'm not sure, but I think the requirements for a judge is 6 hours, 8 hours, I think, per year for domestic violence. That should be, that should be an ongoing thing. So I'm basically, to be honest, I'm really disappointed with the criminal justice system and how they treat our victims.
How many survivors does your agency serve every year?
So if we're looking at hotline calls, we average around 2,000 hotline calls. Nights of shelter that we provide, we did over 300 last year. I'm not sure where we're at this year.
And of those 2,000 survivors, how many do you seek protective orders for? Let me guess. Roughly.
I would say like maybe 45% of the individuals, because they are in great fear. And great fear. The worst thing about it is if you go and apply for a protective order and it gets denied, the perpetrator gets notification that protective order was attempted. And so once you have a victim that finds that out, they're going to turn around and walk right back out the courthouse. So it takes a lot to get someone to follow through a protective order.
I just learned something. It usually gets notice
Yeah,
even when
notified,
the order's been
he gets a copy
denied. Wow.
of the actual paperwork, everything that she went in and applied for, stating the abuse when it happened, anything that he verbalized, it's all out there.
That's unbelievable.
No, it isn't. Sorry.
Sorry.
And can I just say, I'm really grateful to the efforts that you two are doing. I definitely.
I have, it's fine for you if you want to keep talking, but introduce yourself, please.
I can't.
You can't,
I
okay.
don't want to be recorded and
Okay.
consider they.
Okay.
I am also a survivor, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
We're good. I think their statistics are at a minimum incredibly low,
Okay.
because it doesn't factor in the number of people who don't reach out for help, who need help, but they know the system isn't going to help.
Okay. When you do seek legal help for a protective order, in what percentage of those cases are you able to get a lawyer?
Oh, none. I mean,
It is a very small number.
Mhm.
I think I have kind of exhausted my begging and pleading of attorneys to help us out. So I would say it's extremely rare that we find someone to represent.
Wow.
And let me just ask, is legal aid not able to help those people?
Legal aid is overwhelmed.
Well, yeah.
I know for a fact that our local legal aid, and I've worked with her for almost 5 years, 6 years, has never stopped. And I've worked with her a lot. So I don't know how she keeps up. And I believe, how many counties does she cover?
6 or 7?
Yeah, I don't know how she does it. There is no way. But she's pretty dedicated to the victims that she does work with. And so I think you guys have to tighten the reins on who you accept into or assist. But as far as getting an outside attorney in, we do not have that option.
So pro bono attorneys, a private attorney who volunteers time, you can't get those at all.
In this area, are there language barrier issues?
Yes, but we also have several attorneys in the town of Front Royal that they're bilingual.
Okay.
And we use the language line. I mean, we use it anywhere we go.
Okay.
So we can use it I know the court system uses it. And we can use it in point outside of the office as well to assist.
Would it help to have some of the printed materials printed in different languages or not so much?
And I think that there are like the protective order information.
It is.
It is. I think it's in
Okay,
a separate language. But I still don't think that fixes the complexity
No.
of, so. But I did have a question. I thought at one point in time, lawyers you were required or suggested that there were so many hours of pro bono work completed per year. Is that true?
There is a wide gap between suggested and required.
It's not
Yeah. I would say that to my knowledge, that volunteer work is required only in New York and only before you become a member of the bar.
Okay.
Am I?
Oh, it's very right. Virginia does have a rule encouraging for donate to sending a professional. But the lawyers can also voluntarily report a number of hours. And it's just a small percentage of attorneys who report any hours at all. The lawyers who do volunteer attend to do twice the national average, but in terms of just the percentage of total lawyers in the state who volunteer as opposed to other states, it's really low.
One of the other factors that contribute to the difficulty getting an attorney for our victims is that there is a small group of attorneys that are local attorneys have represented the perpetrator at some point in time. And so that makes it very difficult. And so we've also caught on to the fact that perpetrators tend to call around to attorneys right away. And so that is conflict. So then when our victims call that attorney, they cannot serve them because of that.
Wow.
Let me just share.
Please go.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
My impetus is I want to not be on camera. So let me share some more pieces of information if I may, and then I can sit down.
Sure.
If it's okay. So I wanted to share that there's some really great information that's coming out of Texas and San Diego in regards to strangulation cases. So both in terms of making sure that we're using the right terminology. So this is not choking, this is actually strangulation. So I brought some resources for that just to pass along to y'all. I thought that might be helpful. And in the crime of stalking, the Stalking Prevention Awareness and Resource Center has put together a prosecutor's guide to stalking and the crime of stalking. So I share that only because there is information out there. There are states that are making amazing strides and movements in making sure that these perpetrators are put behind bars. And there's scientific evidence and documentation that they've been collecting for a number of years in order to bolster that evidence and bolster that argument. So if I can share.
Absolutely.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Consider those part of market record.
Okay.
Right here, actually.
Thank you.
And tell us the name again of your agency.
Phoenix Project.
Phoenix Project. Okay, good. And would you like to speak more to us as well?
Candy?
I'm just as long as I can speak or people bring things up, and I have a lot to say. It's ramble. So
Tell us what's on your mind.
Breathe deeply and sorry.
It's just the fact that I'm just really shocked about the fact that we cannot get an attorney. So basically, whenever I come into the office, I can't give them the support that they need because I'm not an attorney. I would love to be an attorney, but I'm not an attorney. I'm not qualified to be one. And we have to walk a very fine line for legal advice because we cannot get it. The problem is we can't give anyone else to get it either. We have one attorney in Front Royal and she's wonderful and she does work with our victims sometimes. I also don't want to like bombard her. I mean, she's been kind enough to work as much as she possibly can with her victims, but that's one person. And I also have a lot of concern about the courts and re-victimizations, especially with the cases and the re-traumatizing of, why didn't you leave earlier? Or you keep going back. So why would I do this? There's so much.
When you say the courts, are you talking about the clerks, the judges, all of the above?
Oh, and even the magistrates
Yes.
as well.
Yeah.
And that is very difficult. If I accompany a victim out to the magistrate's office, it's like I have a trial going on and it's just not supposed to be office, it's probable cause, right? So it's very difficult to get that taken care of.
Okay.
I'll also mention too that for, we serve survivors in a rural community, just like Shenandoah County. And there have been times and instances where a survivor has sought, protective orders or whatnot after hours. And then there's a sign up on the door that says, contact Shenandoah County Courthouse because there's nobody available in Warren County.
So they do a Zoom.
So just that lack of availability too seems,
Gotcha. Ma'am, if you'd like to speak to us, we'd love to hear it. Our YouTube, our public live stream only shows this direction, so you're not visible. What this shows is not visible to the public and never will be.
Thank you for that. I think, not sure where to begin. Part of my hesitancy, and I appreciate you respecting me not wanting to meet with you or really having one of this recorded as a challenge, frankly, comes from my background in being a survivor, in my full history working in the IT industry. So that intersection creates a lot of knowledge on my part. And I think we're talking, we're going to stay with this subject for just a moment. Individuals who have been victimized by a domestic partner, or it's a broader range for me than just that. The lack of understanding in the general public, and if we're going to keep it just to the narrow path of the law, of how dangerous it can be for a person's name, image, voice these days with technology. A bit of information that gets released through the natural course of the way the law works can enable a person to be placed in harm's way. And the lack of that understanding, I think, is a great thing of what you guys are working to counter. But that, I think, goes back to their recommendation of having more people trained in being trauma informed. What does that mean? What does it look like? I would raise one relevant legal issue. More than 20 years ago, there was a Virginia path. If you were a victim of domestic violence and the person was found guilty, you had certain protections. Well, time now has passed and those people aren't, quote, covered anymore, but they may not be out of danger. And the law hasn't kept up with how do you make sure those people still have the legal protections they need, even as simple as does this person have to release their physical location on certain people? Because that, again, it's all about safety and security. So just trying to go full circle on what you guys are seeing and how that can evolve to the legal side of and it's interesting because I am a lawyer, so I have that capacity, but I've also been on the receiving end of it before I was a lawyer. So there you go.
And I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I used to work in the mortgage industry, and I know that in the mortgage industry, and it's state by state, and maybe with the land records that certain persons, domestic violence victims, witness protection program people can have their, can anonymously like those recordation and public record documents can be not anonymized, but somehow not associated with their name. But interestingly, I served as an election official in Fairfax last week. And for the first time, I saw that the ID requirements permitted, there was a mechanism so that if you did not want your a home address to be of public record, that could be satisfied. None of the 700 people who voted in my precinct, nobody did, but that was being that.
And that is not consistent, I find, from one jurisdiction to another.
Uh-huh.
And there, if you are currently in the process,
Right,
if you're dealing with an immediate trauma,
right.
and there's a process that protects you, you're good. But there are
Right.
cracks that people are falling in between.
Oh, that's right.
And that's the, let's maybe do better at identifying those cracks and have the process facilitate all of those people.
And that's probably a legislative, that's a,
No doubt, 100%.
yeah, that's a
I would agree.
legislative thing.
100%. But it's not even on the
Yeah.
conversation. I
Right.
don't think anyone knows it's an issue.
We
Yeah.
do have the address confidentiality form that you can fill out with like the Commonwealth Attorney's Office if you're dealing with.
But it has to be active. Right, you have to be in crisis, don't you?
I don't think so. Like, I don't think it has to be a dangerous situation. Now, if in crisis you mean an actual case going.
More, yeah, either one of those.
I would say pretty much, yeah, but I always tell people just to go ahead and put a form in anyhow. There is actually part of the protective order that says about address confidentiality. But with anything, I am not trusting.
Well, and to the point, a lot of the things that we can tell ourselves have now didn't exist when I was going through, when other people have going through.
I mean, I've been in for protective order where they've said, oh, you still live it, blah, 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 blah. I'm like,
Yeah. Oh, no.
Right.
Oh, no.
But this is a great, thank you for bringing it to everyone. For adding it to the chest. Thank you. I think it's a great topic.
Yeah.
Even for, to recommend for CLE, for training, for your group. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of opportunities for things that we can help. Interesting. Improve. Can I add another layer? You want more things to throw at?
Sure.
Let me ask, we have a lawyer in the back and also came to speak. And do you have time preference? What? Do you have any time preference?
Pardon me?
Do you have any time preference? Yeah, let's tell you, why don't you talk right now? If you're willing to- And then we'll get back.
I'm in directions. Okay, whether you guys want.
We're not rushed, there's not gonna be.
Okay, introduce yourself. please.
I'm a This is in Worcester, but I practice in the Shenandoah County. So I'm up in Valley. I don't go as far as Rockingham too very often because nobody wants to do that. And I'm really just here hoping there was more attorneys that were going to be talking because we are very overwhelmed. I do domestic law. And we're very overwhelmed. The reason you're not getting attorneys for the protective orders, the turnaround time is too short. We can't make that work. We can't get people into our office for initial consults. My wait time has gone up over a month for people to wait before they can get in to see me. That's something that's really kind of new in the last year for my office, not for everybody's office. There are some attorneys that you wait weeks to see if you really want them. And the shortest amount of time usually is only about 2 weeks. So those protective order hearings happen too quickly, unfortunately, like they're supposed to pursuant to statute. But that's why a lot of people that if they're calling around, even if they call as soon as they get that emergency protective order, they're just not gonna, I don't care if they're the defendant or the complainant, they're just not going to be able to get in with too many attorneys in the area. We are overwhelmed. We have very few domestic attorneys in the area and they keep shrinking. They retire, they join firms, they move out of the area. We're not getting new domestic attorneys in too much to help handle the volume that we have. So even even people that can afford an attorney or at least attempt to afford an attorney are having great difficulty getting attorneys.
Yeah, that's very important, what you said about getting in there with the turnaround with the protective order.
Yes, and it, and we refer them to Blue Ridge. Blue Ridge can't take them. We refer them to Virginia Lawyers Referral Service, which keeps begging me to come back, but I don't share my money with anybody, so no. And they don't really have anybody locally that's dealing with domestic cases that's on that, at least last time I checked with them. So those are all problems that we are suffering here. And we're losing guardian ad litems too. We have lost a lot of guardian ad litems. I'm a guardian ad litem, have been for over 30 years. And the clerks are begging us to help. We're having people that have not been practicing nearly as long as me, any of you listening, that have pulled their name off the list, at least on a temporary basis, because they're overwhelmed. We all seem to take breaks, but there's got to be a way that we can start fixing that because we're losing that guardian ad litem role. Judges are starting to look at not appointing guardian ad litems for private custody cases when they still believe one might be necessary because they just don't have people on the list. There are some judges that are just pretty much sticking to only for what the statute requires when it's like a DSS case. So guardian ad litem cases are another thing that we don't get paid nearly very much money for guardian ad litem cases, court appointed cases for DSS or anything else, quite frankly. It's not that an attorney can really pay their bills off of those kinds of appointments. We do it more as a function, at least everybody I've talked to, more as a function to assist the legal community, as well as we think it's an important role. Guardian ad litems, as I'm sure everybody acknowledges, is a very important role. And there are some firms that are really against guardian ad litem, the role of the guardian ad litem, wants to do away with it. So we're fighting that as well. And we really need the judges to support us to be able to keep us in the forefront as an important role for the legal system. And I feel like locally, many of them do.
So I think out of the prior 6, 5, however many hearings we've done, at only one did we not hear about problems with guardians ad litem, and that was the one we did at a law school. So their experience of the world was not extensive.
Usually the newer attorneys are the ones that will kind of come in the community and get on those court appointed lists, and guardian ad litem is one of them, and they, have stars in their eyes, and they get beat down very fast because it is, what's a nice way to put it? It will burn you out very fast if that's all you do. And there are some attorneys, that's all they do. Parents and guardian ad litem cases are some of the most difficult people to deal with. And it takes to do a really decent, a fair job. You may be going all over the place as the guardian ad litem. I know locally here, Judge Logan has gotten a CASA program going. So I'm hoping like maybe we can borrow a couple of people on that to help out with that. And over in Page, I think they extend over there. Hasn't really hit Warren or Winchester. I'm not sure it'll ever get to Winchester, but that's a helpful resource as well.
Do you think that more money would help? And would solve the
more money is always going to help. If they raise I've been here since 1990.
And it's never gone.
Exactly.
I know.
The only thing they gave us was if you go sit with a kid in person, you get $75 an hour versus the $55 you were getting. I feel like then the child should be with me for all of my investigations.
Wondering about.
Yes, I mean it really is. It really is a ridiculous amount of money to pay.
This is a personal opinion question that I'm asking you, but it's my understanding that in other states, it's not necessary that you be an attorney to be a guardian ad litem. They probably have more training requirements than we do in Virginia.
Every state, I'm licensed in 3 states. Every state I've been in, you do have to be a licensed attorney. But I do think when I was in Wisconsin, that was the only state where, and that was before I got here. So they could have changed everything. So, but they had attorneys on or guardian ad litem's on contract. So you applied for a contract, and depending on the population or the area you were in, they had a certain amount of attorneys that had a contract, and then they would appoint just those particular people, and that's all they did. That was kind of their job, and they would rotate however many they were appointing. I'm not so sure that's not a bad idea to start getting to in Virginia. I mean, I think this 55-75, it's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then we can make more money with traveling pretty much than the hourly rate. I can make more money just going out to Fairfax and seeing a kid and come back off of the travel money, basically. Especially if I'm sitting in traffic too. So that's the critical part is I know we're suffering in Frederick County, Winchester, Warren County, Shenandoah County, those areas, Clark County. It's ridiculous.
Do you have any thoughts about how to ameliorate the lack of new lawyers?
No, I really, I don't. They come in sometimes. I feel like there's probably a lot of other attorneys in the area that are better to answer that question than me. But I feel like they come in, many of them will come into the public defender's office to cut their teeth as a litigator, or the Commonwealth Attorney's office. And once they get the experience and wherever they're going, some of them will, stick around or, stay in their job and move up or whatever. But there are many that just, come in a couple of years and you don't see them again. I don't do criminal anymore for several years. So I'm not as familiar, but it seems like when I see new faces, I'll be like, who is that? And it's usually like, oh, the new public defender got hired, or the new Commonwealth found another position. There's very few, I'm not saying there's not any, but there's very few new attorneys. And when they come in, they're like, who wants to do family law? I'm kind of stuck in it because it's what I'm known for. But was it my first choice? Not after law school, no. And so, yeah, to get them into doing this kind of work is no problem.
Thank you.
I received a question from one of our committee members online who asked about do judges give continuances to the self-represented petitioners when they're requested, or do they even know to request continuances?
Well, that would require me to be in the room. I would say I would say I've seen judges accommodate people for continuances that are representing themselves. But if there's an aggressive attorney on the other side that's ready to proceed, whichever side, unless they got a pretty good reason, judges want to get those in and out and done because that's the statute, and their dockets are kind of full. But I have seen some judges say, well, I think this makes sense. I'll tell you, the other cases are really just seems like they're escalating and they're horrible, or juvenile on juvenile protective orders. And that requires guardian ad litem to be appointed for both. And then that really makes the guardian ad litem the prosecutor and the defense. And we didn't even file them. And that we don't want to do that. I don't know any guardian ad litem that wants to do those. And it's a lot that seems to be escalating. And the statute requires, obviously, for the guardian ad litem to be appointed. So we just had one, and the individual was out of state. The accused was out of state, did get served, and there was two attorneys. We were both representing juveniles. And so that attorney wanted to continue it because they hadn't had anyone to speak to their ward. And judge was not really excited about doing it, but I thought it was a good idea as well. So we did. But I think if I would have objected, we may not have. I think that made some sense as a reasonable nature to give everybody time to look at things, because juveniles against each other, you never know if it's just, by the next day they'll be good. Because sometimes it's, it's just that they got in a fight at school or something like that. And I mean, I had one over in Warren County. They begged me to come over. I went and did that one. I just got the parents in a room and said, can you guys fix this? I mean, why can't you guys be parents? Like, get over there and be parents and talk about it. And they did. And the kids ended up shaking hands after it was over, and we're done and dismissed it. And I haven't heard anything since. So some of those things, unfortunately, wind up taking up court time that I'm not sure are really necessary. If we could do some sort of diversionary thing with juvenile and juvenile protective orders or something, that would be more helpful, because I don't think the juveniles themselves and even their parents that are filing them, I don't think they really understand what exactly they're doing and what exactly they're asking for. They just know they don't want their child to have this problem any longer. But there should be something else that could help with that. That's not the court system.
Yeah.
And that's why I explain that to people a lot of times, is that, look, you want a court system to do something, to function in the way the court system. It's a legal system. It doesn't always function. You can't
Like
change
social
people's
workers.
person. Yeah, it's not meant to do the things you want it to do. Interesting. But it'd be really nice if we got more attorneys and legal aid would be able to help more people, unfortunately. Especially with divorces. You guys used to have funding for that, but it just seems like y'all don't have any funding for that much anymore, unless there's an abuse allegation or abuse finding in it or something. So a lot of people can't afford private attorneys, and there's just a huge gap right there of indigent people that don't qualify for help with legal aid, but can't afford even, an associate attorney.
So are you aware of other areas of law? Let's see if I can ask this coherently. What we've heard in other areas are, there aren't even enough real estate attorneys to do like property transfers, set up corporations, trusts and estates. Are there other areas where you feel like there's a pretty glaring need? And I understand that you are in domestic relations world, but
Not as much as domestic. I mean, there's a lot of lawyers that don't like to retire. I mean, they'll keep working until they keel over. So we have a lot of, it seems like, Winchester County area. I hope nobody's watching. It's looking like, what? I think we have more of an older population and more seasoned attorneys. I feel like I'm very seasoned now, because I start talking about some of the judges and I look around the room and nobody knows who I'm talking about. And I go, oh my goodness.
right.
But in terms of like estate planning, real estate law, there's still a fair amount. Now it's narrowing, but I couldn't speak to that as whether they're suffering as much. It just seems like any attorney you talk to right now, they're all way busier than normal. Just than average. Like everybody is just kind of treading water to keep their heads up.
Another question from a committee member online who's a family law practitioner.
Hopefully he's not one.
How would the community welcome attorneys from other areas coming in to help?
I always tell, but I always talk to young attorneys, and tell them, like, as long as I'm not on the other side, feel free to pick up the phone and call me, and I'll answer any questions you kind of have. I mean, I even help Northern Virginia attorneys that, believe me, some of them are more pitiful. They just don't have a lot of mentoring. They kind of get thrown in the deep end and just have to bill like $500 an hour or whatever it is they're billing. And then come to find out they just don't have that basis, the fundamental basis of understanding. And so I mean, I'm willing, and I really feel like our local bar, and I think probably Shenandoah and Warren, I can't really speak for them. But it's a pretty friendly bar in terms of, as long as you're on the other side of the case, that are willing to kind of encourage people and answer questions and help out in that way. I've had people call me over some, the most silly things, like I can't fill out the DC 40. Like, what do you put down for this? Or those types of things, or how do you handle this particular judge because he yelled at me the other day about this. Oh yeah, he doesn't like that. Don't do that. So I mean, that's what I would say. We don't have a flourishing bar that's active, our bar association in our local area, that would just, that would be something like that. But we do a couple of things, but in terms of like bringing in the young lawyers.
So it's interesting you say that, because one of the other things that we have heard, not necessarily in the formal listening session, is that apparently many, particularly in rural areas, the local bars are, I would say, not flourishing. That the number of lawyers is diminishing, they're aging, they don't see frankly, the point in getting together. And that makes everything harder in some ways. If you're looking for a place to be mentored, if I were a young lawyer, I would go to the bar meeting. But if there are no bar meetings,
That's true, because when I first started practicing in Michigan, that was a lot of how I got to know various attorneys, was going to the bar meetings, because they were monthly.
And
we don't have them
did the judges come to those meetings also?
No.
Because in Fairfax, I think the whole reason the Fairfax bar exists is for them judges.
They're invited to the picnics, the parties, in terms of like a bar meeting.
When I was a newbie, not in this jurisdiction, I was a member of American Court, both as a pupil and they do include judges. And I think that was the best networking opportunity, both from a mentoring perspective, a cross-pollination of subject matter, resources. I mean, if you're looking at how we to grow, that's again my experience, but my experience is 2 decades old, and I can agree more with what's being said, which is we've lost contact. I feel like I've lost contact with everything.
We typically have bench bar luncheons or something, so we'll do 1 or 2 of those maybe a year. So we'll meet with the district judges or the circuit judges and over lunch and try to pick their brains about things, and then hear from them what they would like to see. And it always seems like a very helpful thing. But there's just,
You'll forgive me, I have never litigated in Virginia. Do local judges tend to have law clerks? Or
so Warren and Shenandoah share one. Winchester, Frederick County have 0 because they couldn't find one.
So it's not a factor.
No, unfortunately. I can't think of any. I don't know what Harrisonburg does. I don't know what Rockingham does. Whether they have anybody or not, I think they might. But they, Frederick County Circuit Court chose to, continue to utilize an assistant, and which is helpful. I mean, she coordinates a lot of things. So the ones that they've had have been very helpful in coordinating their docket. So,
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Back to front row.
I think actually thank you for speaking, answered a lot of my questions, which surprisingly, again, anecdotally, I ran into an interesting experience over the last 3 or 4 years of the inability of myself to find legal aid. Yeah, I appreciate the irony. Right. And so, you muddle along where things don't get done. Conversation with someone that gives you enough of a thread that you can then chase something down, but it's really been kind of eye-opening. If someone in the system can't get access to it, what is it like And it must be abysmal. Like, in terms of changing circumstances, explains a lot. So,
John, did you want to talk about anything?
I've got some random notes if you want to hear them.
Yeah, please.
you gotta stand up.
Random note. I'm John Whitfield. I'm a executive director of Blue Ridge Legal Services, legal aid society that serves the Shenandoah Valley. I'm also co-chair of the Virginia Access to Justice Commission. Over the last 44 years, Blue Ridge has worked with the local bars across our service area, up and down the Shenandoah Valley. And I've seen a decline in the number of attorneys in our areas and in the strength and vitality of the bar associations within our service area. The local bar in most of our jurisdictions have just been hollowed out over the last 4 decades. There are more lawyers in Stanton 40 years ago than there are now, and maybe substantially more then than now, even though the population is larger. And the attorneys that are there, more and more of them are either with the Commonwealth Attorney's Office or the Public Defender's Office, or hired by local government or local DSS, in-house counsel. Many fewer general practitioners who are the people that would be most available for the members of the public who need a lawyer. There's just a real scarcity of them. And I think that's true up and down the valley. Bar associations are struggling to maintain relevance. We've got some good, historically, some strong bar associations in the service area, but the Harrisonburg Bar used to have easily 40 or 50 or 60 people at their monthly meetings. Today we had a meeting, there might have been 20. And that's the common thing. So, and in Lexington, just a few lawyers. All the smaller towns, just a few lawyers. It's just not a critical mass anymore. And no new lawyers moving into it. Random fact number 2. Speaking of domestic violence, 7 years ago, we were thrilled to get a grant from VOCA funding, where we were able to add 5 new domestic violence attorney positions to our program. And that's just transformed our ability to help victims of domestic violence. And then that funding source started to decline, and so they were cutting the funding by 10%, and then by 10%. So then we had to let one of those positions not be filled, and we're down to 4. And then last year, dramatic cut in that funding, so that we now only have 1 attorney funded by VOCA instead of 5 7 years ago. The other, we have not laid off any of those other attorneys yet. There's still 3 other attorneys, but that's putting severe on our budget. And so it's just, it could be a matter of time before we lose more of those positions, because we have to. And we've already heard the testimony about the need for attorneys to represent victims. As referenced earlier, the data showing the correlation between representation and success rates, very clear and disputable, that if you're represented, your chances of winning are double, triple, choose your exponential than if you're unrepresented. And that's why people hire lawyers, and that's why we're talking about legal deserts. The problem is another way of looking at this problem is that our court system has a design flaw. Our court system was designed on the premise that everybody would be represented by counsel, that they would know how to draft the pleadings, they would know how to do the rules of procedure, they would know how to do the rules of evidence, they would be able to talk the language of the court, be able to draft pleadings and orders and all that. And when both sides are represented by counsel, we have a flawless legal system. It works very well. But it requires people to hire an attorney. And that's becoming harder and harder for anybody to afford. Low-income people are essentially locked out of our system of justice because they can't afford it unless they can get a lawyer through legal aid. So, and that's what people call the justice gap. So there's three prongs to try to solve that justice gap. One is to increase funding for legal aid exponentially. If you did that, that would probably solve it eventually with enough money, enough resources, enough legal aid lawyers, assuming you can find somebody to hire. The second prong would be increased pro bono participation, which we've tried and we're trying again. But I'm not holding out a whole lot of hope for that. And the other problem, instead of trying to increase the supply of lawyers to meet the demand for lawyers, why not reduce the need for lawyers by redesigning our court system so that you don't have to have a lawyer to be successful in the court system? Right now, we have this exception called small claims courts. In general district court, for a small claim, you can file in what's called small claims division, and no lawyers are allowed. And the judge has freedom to liberally apply the rules and to just get it justice. And we've had that for decades. I've heard some judges say they really enjoy doing that. But it's just a fraction of the cases that are going through our system. One idea would be anytime two parties appear in front of the judge, neither one of them are represented, ring the bell at small claims court. And then the judge can legally use the relaxed rules that the statutes allow. You could do that both in juvenile court and in general district court. There ought to be some consideration, at least a pilot program, something to see if we can expand the scope of small claims court to help close the justice gap. Next random thought. There's an implicit bias in judges and court systems against unrepresented parties. Here's my theory. We've heard the data that shows if you're represented, your odds of winning are twice, 3 times what they would be if you're unrepresented. So we know that that factor, whether there's representation or not, affects the outcome in a way the judges can't control. Because every judge is thinking they're deciding the case correctly. And when they go home at night and go sleep, they can only sleep if they feel like they've done justice that day in every case they've heard. Well, how can they reconcile that with the fact that unrepresented parties lose twice as much? How do you reconcile that? And I think the way judges reconcile that is they convince themselves that pro se litigants don't have a good case. And therefore, of course, they're going to lose. It's not because they don't have a lawyer, because they don't have a good case. Pro se litigants hardly ever have a good case. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, of course. And here's a little anecdote that I think buttresses this point. A couple of years ago, I was down in Roanoke for a big bar CLE. 100 lawyers there at least, bunch of judges, including circuit court judges, and we're trying to convince people to do pro bono. And I went through all the statistics about how representation affects outcomes. And so it's clear that, okay, there's a study in Maryland looking at parents fighting for custody of their children. And that found that when both sides were represented, mothers won custody about 60% of the time. When neither side was represented, mothers won custody about 65% of the time. When only the mother was represented, the father wasn't, mothers won custody 80% of the time or 90% of the time. Then if you put the shoe on the other foot, where only the father was represented and the mother was not, then suddenly fathers won custody most of the time. Now, in every one of those cases, the judge was trying their best just to make sure that the best interests of the child were served and that they were awarding custody based on the best interest of the child. But in fact, what they were doing was rewarding custody to the person who had the lawyer. That's what the statistics show. So anyway, down in Roanoke, at the end of my presentation, after hammering these correlations of the effect of representation, I asked the circuit court judge to sort of close and sort of lead the charge that people should do pro bono. And he gets up there and said, y'all really should do pro bono. These pro se litigants, if they have a lawyer, they're going to feel better about losing. Even if they don't have a good case. That's what he took away from it. Because judges have internalized the only way they can justify how they rule every day, and poor people without lawyers lose all the time, is because they don't have good cases. It's not that they don't have a lawyer. I've been at Legal Aid, last random thought, for 44 years. I started as a law student in 1980. And looking back, sadly, that may have been the high water mark of federally funded legal aid, the summer of 1980. At the end of the Carter administration, Hillary Rodham Clinton was president of the Legal Services Corporation. They just ended an expansion program where every county in the country had a legal aid program. There were lots of money coming into legal aid. And that's when I joined legal aid as a law student. And I thought, wow, this is great. What a wonderful thing, providing justice for poor people. I want to be a part of this. And the way things are going, in a few years, we'll have enough lawyers to meet the need. I didn't know that I was right there coming in right before the bottom was going to fall out, and that we'd be struggling ever since with funding to try to make up for that justice gap. I don't think we're ever going to get funding to increase the number of legal aid lawyers to close the justice gap, sadly. I don't think we're ever going to get pro bono attorneys involved enough to help legal aid close the justice gap. So I think the only way we're going to close the justice gap is to reform our court system so that you don't need lawyers, and except in the cases that are really complicated, not the cases that our clients go in every day. And that's my last random thought.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah.
Candy, is there anything else you wanted to say? Which doesn't have to dovetail exactly with.
I just really think that the criminal justice system in itself is very damaged. And I just feel like that it's really easy to sit there and say that, yes, you care about the victims and that you want to see the right thing done and that justice is going to be, that it's not going to be. There's no such thing to our victims as justice or closure. And I really think that it's back and say, I care and that I'm going to do what's right. But I want to see the actions backed up when we're in the criminal justice system. And I don't. And I hate that.
I hate it too.
It's just basically we go to it with debate presence, but other than that, we can't speak. I actually was victim witness director for several years at the sheriff's office in Warren County. And at that point in time, we were permitted to go sit with the actual victim up at the table for the protective order hearings, and we were no longer permitted to do that. So what happens then is you have the perpetrator here, and 4 or 5 feet away sits our survivor, who then sits here and glares at our victim the whole entire time. So there's no law against that. But it's very intimidating to the people that we work with. So I just really feel like, even though I think people come off as though that they're educated and that they care, I don't feel like it's there all the way around. It's just, I mean, because you have to figure, we go from juvenile domestic relations, bump it up to, if it's a felony, right into circuit court. So you're now dealing with 2 different judges. And so that has to carry up. And it's so traumatic to just sit there and tell the victim, you've got to go through this with a different judge. And that's difficult. It's really difficult. I think the system also needs to realize too that not only do we feel upset with the way that things go, we internalize that as advocates, and it's extremely hard on us as well. I know I come back sometimes and I'm just like, I can't believe what I saw. I can't believe I sat and watched an attorney tear my victim apart. And you know, there was nothing for her to do to protect herself. That makes me sick. And that's just it.
Thank you all very much for sharing your time, your expertise, and opinions with us.
And that's a final question.
Please.
What are some of the recommendations you've heard in the other groups? Can you share with that?
More money for JALs. I mean, some of them are things which should be, you know, they sound simple, but you know, that is again something that's not really within the bar can recommend that, the court could recommend that, but it's I believe that's within the purview of the legislature, right? I mean,
We need the legislature to support them.
right. I mean, I'll tell you what I think that I mean, David, in conjunction with the state bar, and I, with, you know, David, we're cross-fertilizing, obviously. I mean, we will come up with a list of issues raised, and we may be able to come up with suggested solutions. For instance, while this hasn't been raised at this particular hearing, you know, there are issues relating to the bar exam in Virginia. You know, ours, as someone put it at one of our earlier meetings, if you take the Virginia bar, you have the key to 1 door. If you take the UVE, you have the key to 42 doors. What are most people going to do? You know, this 42 doors or 1 door. But we can't make them do anything. So what we're trying to do was gather information about what are the problems, what are the barriers, and you have helped immensely with that. And what we can do is try to organize those thoughts. And as I said, there is some consistency. There are some things that come up new each time, but there is some consistency. And for instance, maybe because there are so few lawyers involved in the protective order business, other than maybe the ones representing the abusers, I really had no clue about some of those changes. But now we can listen.
You said the traffic.
Come on in.
Okay, thank you so much.
Do you want water?
These are my daughter and the.
Okay.
Hi, come on in.
Hi, you.
Thank you for coming.
Sorry.
No, it's all right.
Thank you.
So the answer is we will do for the Supreme Court committee, we'll do a very skeletal issue report by mid-December. And we will do some sort of final report after we do Northern Virginia. In the first quarter, we'll report something out in the second quarter, and that will be, I believe, publicly available. and we'll see where it goes. I mean, we can identify problems, we can suggest solutions, but there's a limited extent to which we can actually make them happen. We need to motivate other, it's just, we need to motivate other people in some cases to get moving.
So two things I've heard a lot just in this meeting is more money, more money, more money.
Yes.
Does the bar have a dedicated grant? Yeah. You know?
No, they don't. And Virginia constitutionally allows state agencies, so, and the state bar is an agency, under the Supreme Court, to spend what is created for them by the General Assembly. That's it. Unless their governor allows.
Avenues for fundraising
Yeah.
is your the GA or can't private groups do?
Oh, yeah, they can give
Yeah.
money to the legal services, but
Right.
not to the state bar. So the
Right.
legal services can fund
And
it.
that's what I'm sort of trying to
Right.
figure out who's got ownership for trying to solve some of these problems.
Right.
General Assembly is hot, but it's not enough, so if we want outside monies, yeah. Someone's gotta ask for it.
Right, and there is another sort of grant-making legal institution in the state called Virginia Law Foundation, which prides itself on having given out many millions of dollars. And they have micro grants, which are available up to $5,000, which are pretty easy to apply for. And then they have larger grants, and that cycle should be starting soon, because I think that those are usually doing in the end of the first quarter, beginning of the second quarter. Yeah.
March 15th typically.
Okay. But we're talking, some of the needs we've talked about financially would be, subsidize new attorneys coming into legal desert areas to open a practice. You have to make it financially attractive for them, help with loan forgiveness, help with, this and that.
Yeah, and one of the things that has been suggested, and I need to do research on this, I have not yet, is the medical profession is experiencing some of the same challenges the lawyers are in terms of serving rural populations. And different states have taken different approaches. I know someone who was an anesthesiology nurse in West Virginia, and West Virginia was willing to pay for his medical school expenses at the University of West Virginia if he would serve a rural community for 6 years after. Right? I mean, it's sort of like ROTC, except it's not the military.
Right.
And could something like that happen? Could the state or county subsidize new attorneys coming in by, paying their rent in downtown Woodstock for 2 years? Whatever. I mean, there are different ways to do it. We learned that, in fact, in Grundy, Virginia, the local chamber of commerce or the county, there was some either public or quasi-public funding to pay for law school graduates who are taking the Virginia bar, to pay for the bar review course and their living expenses over the summer so that they would stay in Grundy for the summer, stay in Virginia. And that was, so there are think outside the box ways to do it, but those are at some level Band-Aids, right? I mean, we really need some systemic.
But it's looking at all the Band-Aids saying what doesn't work, and then
Band-Aids are a
there's
start.
somebody in charge.
Right.
Let's have it now system-wide available versus just in one county. And I'm gonna poke the bear.
Okay, I'd like to hear from you, but I want to pause
Please, go
after it
ahead.
because we have a new family that's arrived and also want to hear from you.
So what we're doing is we're trying to listen to the problems people are having accessing lawyers and the legal system and barriers. And we're going to end up as you just heard a little bit, making reports and trying to figure out how to solve these problems. But we are asking people to tell us about what problems they have had themselves, their friends, their family, businesses, and so on. And it's being live streamed on YouTube and recorded. And we would love it. If you would like to talk, please do come introduce yourselves and talk to us.
We would like to hear your story. What brought you here? If you had trouble getting legal, What was the impact for you? Do you know others who have been in that situation? We'd like to hear what brought you here. Can you come stand up here?
We promise we're friendly.
That's great. Thank you very much. Because we have people listening online and they'll be able to hear you better if you're up here.
Ready?
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's great.
All right, my name is Chantal Alvarez.
Turn about 30 degrees. Perfect.
There you go.
Because we have a camera right on camera on the left. Okay. Go ahead.
And I got pulled over for speeding, going excess over the limit. And I had court, and that's what brought me today.
Okay.
As with my parents, they only speak Spanish.
Okay. Okay. So did you get pulled over today?
No.
No. Okay. How long ago was this?
Probably like May 15.
Okay. All right. And have you been to court yet?
Yeah, that's why I'm here.
Okay. What happened when you got to court?
When I got to court, they asked me about my 'cause I didn't have my full license, I didn't have my permit. So I had to go to June for like 2 nights. And I didn't get community service, and I had to come here for this class. And then I have another court on January 7th.
Hmm.
See if I came to this class.
And did you understand each step of what happened? Did you feel like it was explained to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So if the court accepts that you did all the things that you were supposed to do, you know what's going to happen. Is the charge going to get dismissed? Is something else going to happen?
No, she currently has my license, so she said she would give me.
Okay.
Okay.
So did you try to get a lawyer to help you out?
Yeah, I had a lawyer. They assigned me a lawyer.
Okay. And was the lawyer helpful to you?
Yeah, he was very helpful.
Okay. Okay. Do you know anybody that's had trouble getting a lawyer for anything?
Not that I know of.
I see. Okay. We're glad you're here. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anything else that anyone would like to say?
Okay. All right.
Good. We have a couple people online, so I want to thank you for joining us on YouTube or our other platform. And wait, I've got a question from one of our online lawyers. It sounds as though she was court ordered to attend the hearing. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct. Okay,
Good.
we are grateful that you showed up. If you signed in and left us your email address, we will do follow-up information from time to time as what's happening with our process. We will make use of what you shared with us tonight in our reports. And
we may actually check back with you as we go through this process, because we've got recordings and notes, but
Track you down.
yeah, but in a good way.
Yeah.
If you happen to know of any trainings or webinars or anything like that, you think that it would be beneficial for like our agency to participate in?
I feel like you might know what it would be helpful for the lawyers
Yeah.
to participate.
Well, I think we are an agency of we basically have 3 direct of care staff, our executive director, and then our admin assistant. So there are 3 of us. That okay, I'm the only court advocate, but I know that the other ones could handle it if they went in. And so we do try to cover as many resources and trainings and stuff that we were supposed to have our crime victims issues conference this year, and so it ran out of money, so they couldn't do that. But I mean, anything as far as that, I think that they don't understand, attorneys don't understand too. My client, I'm gonna bend over backwards to help you as much as possible. So I'm gonna make your job 100 times easier. if you work with that person. So I mean, it's a give or take.
Or I have to explain it twice because I have to explain it not just to
Mhm.
client, but now I have to explain it to you too.
Well, the good thing is that generally my clients that I work with, whenever they work with an attorney, we immediately get a release signed. So I'm able to sit in with them, or we do photo conferences.
But do you see the problem, the potential problem? I get, like, the things that they want, and the things that you want may not be the same, and it's almost like having a parent to go, okay, this isn't your case, this is theirs.
I do see that, but a lot of the times what we do is meet beforehand. What they want to ask, because, yeah, I would want the whole thing. Yeah. And that's taken years to understand. But in order to benefit them, I have to say, I have to follow what they want, like they're my client, I have to do it, but not to say don't put what you said.
Someone got down on Hogan, did you guys ever know?
All right.
She's.
Candy, I'm gonna give you my card because one of is on our committee, works for the court and works in the domestic violence area, and I would like to connect you with her.
That's great.
So I'll give you my card. You'll have my contact information, and tomorrow or Friday we can meet them.
Good. I think we're done. Any last words?
We can talk when we're
Okay.
done.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. We do have refreshments. Please help yourself to what we have here, and thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
We're done. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
No. Yeah. I agree.
Person to person.
Thank you.
Driving right person.
It's unfortunate.
Me too.
I don't know.
Yeah. Next week?
Yes, next week in Lexington. Let's say not, yeah. And we're gonna be at the school administration building.
Right.
Which is bizarre, in terms of how you get it going.
No.
Possible entrances, and you can't tell from the outside which one is supposed to be. So I'm having some signs.
Sounds real good.
Okay.
But this was no way to link something that was going on. So we got them this week and say, well, that was going to be my fault. Yeah.
I think,
It's supposed to be something.
yeah, Jan was very helpful. She lined up the school building and then I had to go over and meet with them just to make sure they wanted to see violence like that. But that was helpful. Yeah, so we need some. Yeah, let me get recommendations. We need the fun part. I did not. Yeah. Wow.
Isn't that? Oh, like Jason's fundraiser.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, let me turn this off. Sorry.
Yes. He's been hired by LCV.
They call him Sam.